I was born on a crisp autumn morning in 1,920 inches, a small windswept town in the heart of the American Midwest. My earliest memories are of endless fields, the scent of freshly turned soil, and the loyal eyes of the dogs that ran beside me as I raced through the cornfields. My family lived modestly. My father tilled the land, and my mother tended a garden that seemed to bloom regardless of the harsh winds that swept across the plains. From a very young age, I learned the value of hard work, patience, and above all, responsibility not just for myself, but for every living creature that shared our home. Dogs were my first teachers. I remember a lanky chocolate brown hound named Scout who followed me everywhere. Scout had a sense for danger, a loyalty that never wavered, and an uncanny ability to read my moods. I would spend hours tossing sticks and running drills in the yard, learning unknowingly lessons that would later define my life on the battlefield. That bond with Scout was more than companionship. It was a lesson in trust, communication, and silent understanding. As I grew, I became more aware of the world beyond our small town. Radio broadcasts crackled with news from Europe, whispers of a war that seemed both distant and inevitable. While my peers daydreamed of baseball games and dances, I imagined a different sort of adventure, a calling that would demand courage, skill, and sacrifice. And though I did not yet know it, that calling would come sooner than I expected in a form I could have never anticipated. Little did I know then that my path would lead me far from the cornfields of my childhood into the roar of artillery, the mud of foreign beaches, and the companionship of a four-legged comrade who would teach me lessons no human ever could. That comrade would become my shadow, my confidant, and my lifeline in the chaos to come. It was a sweltering summer morning when I first set foot inside the military dog training center. The air was thick with dust and the unmistakable scent of wet fur and sweat. Rows of kennels lined the compound, each holding dogs of every size, and breathed their eyes bright with intelligence and anticipation. That day I met him Rex, a German shepherd with a coat as dark as midnight and eyes that seemed to pierce through me, sizing me up as if he already knew every secret I carried in my chest. Rex wasn't just any dog. From the moment our eyes met, I felt a strange sense of recognition, like meeting an old friend for the first time. He had been brought to the center after being rescued from a breeder's cramped, harsh conditions, and he carried the weight of uncertainty in every careful movement. Yet beneath that wary exterior, I sensed courage, loyalty, and a spark that would one day save lives on the battlefield. Our first weeks together were grueling. I had to earn his trust, and he had to learn to obey commands under extreme conditions. Every day we ran drills, sprints across muddy fields, obstacle courses that tested balance and agility, and exercises to locate hidden objects and respond to signals. I taught him to follow hand gestures, subtle shifts in my stance, and soft verbal cues. He responded with astonishing speed, his body and mind perfectly in tune with my intentions. Beyond the training, we built a bond that transcended commands and obedience. I could read his moods in a twitch of an ear or the flick of his tail. He learned to anticipate danger, to sense tension among the humans around him, and to act without hesitation when lives were at stake. I, in turn, learned patience, empathy, and the unspoken language of trust that only forms between a human and a dog, when both know they must rely entirely on one another. As the days passed, I understood that Rex was not just a companion, but a partner, a fellow soldier who would face the horrors of war at my side. The drills, the sweat, the minor frustrations, they all became stepping stones, preparing us for a reality far harsher than the muddy fields of the training center. And deep down, I knew that when the time came, Rex and I would be tested in ways neither of us could yet imagine. While Rex and I honed our skills on the training grounds, the world beyond the fences was unraveling in ways that would soon engulf us. Europe was a continent in turmoil. The German army held vast territories under its control. Cities lay in ruins from relentless bombing, and civilians moved through shadowed streets with wary eyes. Every radio broadcast, every newspaper headline brought news of another battle, another loss, another strategic maneuver that would shape the fate of millions. Back home in the Midwest, life seemed deceptively calm. Yet, even in our small town, the tension of the war was palpable. Families whispered about sons and brothers being drafted. Neighbors exchanged letters from the front, their words heavy with longing and fear. I could feel it in the air, a collective anticipation of something monumental. It was a sense that the world we knew was about to change forever, and that ordinary people like me and Rex would be thrust into the chaos. Our unit was briefed extensively on the upcoming Normandy invasion, a daring plan that would strike at the heart of German defenses along the French coast. Every detail, every map, every exercise was a reminder of the stakes involved. As I studied troop movements and beach defenses, I realized that this was not a training exercise nor a drill, it was the real thing. Lives would be lost and the bond between men and animals would be tested in ways I had only imagined in nightmares. Yet even amidst the anxiety, there was a strange sense of purpose. We were part of something larger than ourselves, a mission that demanded courage, precision, and unwavering trust. I looked down at Rex, who sat attentively at my side ears, perked eyes sharp and ready. In that moment, I understood that the same courage that fueled the soldiers across the Atlantic also burned in the heart of this dog, a loyal companion who would face the unknown alongside me. The days leading up to our departure were filled with meticulous preparations, letters to loved ones, and quiet reflections on what we were about to face. And as I tightened the straps on Rex's harness and reviewed our final drills, I felt a surge of both fear and resolve. The war was coming, and with it, a journey that would test every ounce of skill, trust, and heart that Rex and I possessed. The morning air was heavy with anticipation. As I stood on the dock, Rex at my side, his fur glistening under the early Sunday. The transport ship loomed ahead, a massive steel beast ready to carry us across the Atlantic to a land I had only seen in maps and briefings. My heart pounded a mix of excitement, fear, and the bitter weight of leaving home. I could feel Rex's tension, his body pressed close to mine, sensing the change in routine, the uncertainty in my own steps. My mother clutched my arm, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Be careful, Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling. "And take care of Rex. He's more than just a dog, he's family." I swallowed hard, nodding, trying to keep my composure. My younger sister Emily had wrapped her arms around my waist, burying her face in my coat. "Write to us," she pleaded. "Tell us everything." I promised, though, I knew the letters would be few and far between, and the news would always be filtered through fear and censorship. As I stepped onto the gangplank, I glanced back one last time at the fields of our farm, the familiar shapes of the barn and silos, and the small grove of oak trees where Rex and I had raced countless mornings. That world, simple and secure, was slipping away, replaced by the unknown horrors of war. Yet beneath the dread, a spark of resolve burned. I had trained for this moment, and Rex had trained with me. Together, we would face whatever lay ahead. The dock bustled with other soldiers, some laughing nervously, others silent, each carrying their own fears and hopes. Officers barked orders, and the ship's engines rumbled like the growl of some slumbering giant. I checked Rex's harness one more time, adjusting the straps, and whispered, "We'll get through this, buddy. One step at a time." He gave a soft bark, his tail flicking once steady and confident as if answering, "Yes, we will." As the gangplank retracted and the ship began to move, carrying us toward the unknown, I realized that this was no longer training. The war was waiting for us across the horizon, and Rex and I would soon find out whether our bond was strong enough to survive it. The farm, the quiet fields, the familiar smells, they were memories now, treasures I would carry into the storm ahead. The transport ship pitched and rolled as it cut through the gray waters of the Atlantic. The air inside the hold was thick with the smell of oil, salt, and the unmistakable scent of wet fur. Rex huddled close to my leg, his ears twitching at every creak of steel and distant groan of the engines. Around us, soldiers fidgeted, murmured, and exchanged nervous glances. Some tried to make small talk, their voices strained with forced cheerfulness. Others stared silently at the bulkheads, lost in thoughts of home, of letters yet to be written, of families waiting across the ocean. I took a deep breath, letting my fingers trail along Rex's spine. He seemed calm, though I knew that inside his senses were stretched to their limits. Every vibration, every metallic echo, every unfamiliar scent registered in his mind. He was alert, vigilant, and ready. I whispered to him, "We'll be in France soon, buddy. Stay with me, and we'll get through it." His eyes met mine, dark and unwavering, and I felt a surge of reassurance. During the long hours aboard the ship, we kept ourselves occupied. Rex and I practiced drills I had improvised to keep him sharp. I hid small objects among the crates and debris, signaling him to find them. He moved with precision, nose to the ground, tail high, retrieving each item with speed and focus. The other soldiers paused occasionally, some watching with curiosity, others shaking their heads in amazement. "That dog's going to save someone's life," one whispered. I allowed myself a small, proud smile. At night, the ship rocked gently and I huddled in a corner with Rex lying across my lap. The dim lantern light cast long shadows on the walls, and I thought of home, the quiet fields, the farmhouse, the oak grove where we had raced in the mornings. I could almost feel the breeze from those fields, the scent of the soil and the warmth of the Sunday Rex's steady breathing reminded me that despite the vast unknown ahead, I was not alone. Every day brought us closer to the European coast, closer to the reality I had only imagined in training. The camaraderie with my fellow soldiers grew a shared understanding that our bond between man and dog, between comrade and comrade, would be tested beyond anything we had faced. And though fear simmered beneath the surface, I felt a cautious optimism. Rex and I had trained for this, and together we were ready to step into the storm that awaited us on the beaches of Normandy. We arrived in England first, and after a few days of additional briefings and drills, the orders came. We were to join the first wave of reconnaissance patrols along the Normandy coast. The morning we boarded the landing craft, a cold, salty breeze stung my face, and I felt the weight of reality pressing down. This was no longer training. This was the front line. Rex stayed close, his body taut ears forward, eyes scanning the horizon, mirroring every unease I tried to suppress. The craft lurched as we approached the beaches, the roar of distant artillery echoing across the water. Soldiers murmured prayers, whispered goodbyes, or simply stared blankly at the waves. I felt a mix of fear, adrenaline, and determination. I whispered to Rex, "We've got this, buddy. Stick with me and we'll get through it." He nudged my hand with his nose, a silent promise of loyalty and courage that steadied my nerves more than any training could. Our mission was simple in instruction but impossible in execution. Scout the area ahead of the infantry, locate mines, identify potential ambush points, and warn of any incoming threats. The first time we stepped onto the wet, shingle-strewn beach, my boots sinking into the sand, with every step I realized that every drill we had run in the Midwest was only a fraction of what we faced here. Rex sniffed the ground, paused, then barked sharply. I followed his gaze and spotted a partially buried mine, its metal casing glinting in the weak morning light. I marked it and signaled the team Rex had saved lives before a single shot was fired. Throughout the day, we moved cautiously, Rex alert to every scent, sound, and shadow. He guided us through debris, alerted us to camouflage obstacles, and seemed to anticipate danger before I could even process it. The patrols were exhausting both physically and mentally, but I began to understand the depth of our partnership. In a world suddenly filled with chaos, smoke, and uncertainty, we had each other, and that was a lifeline. By nightfall, we had returned to our temporary camp, soaked and exhausted, yet alive. The first assignment had tested every skill, every lesson, every ounce of trust between man and dog. I looked down at Rex, tired but unwavering, and I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. The war was no longer a distant story, it was ours to endure. The days following our first patrol were a blur of drills, reconnaissance, and careful observation. Each morning, Rex and I would run through a series of exercises designed to simulate the chaos of the battlefield. I hid objects beneath rubble among sandbags and under overturned crates, signaling him to find them with a subtle hand gesture or a whispered command. His precision never faltered. Every alert, every bark, every movement saved us from potential danger in ways I had never imagined during training back home. Coordination with the infantry became critical. We learned to anticipate the movements of our team, to navigate behind cover, and to communicate silently through gestures and eye contact. Rex adapted quickly, moving ahead or circling back as needed, signaling threats with an urgency I couldn't ignore. Once during a simulated ambush exercise, he froze and growled low in his throat. Moments later, a fellow soldier stumbled upon a camouflage tripwire. Rex had detected it before it could trigger a fatal trap. That day, the team looked at us differently. We were no longer just the dog handler and his dog, we were partners in survival. The environment tested us relentlessly. Mud from relentless rain soaked our boots and seeped into every crevice. The smell of wet earth and gunpowder hung in the air, mingled with the metallic scent of blood from minor injuries sustained during drills. Rex's coat became matted with sand and grime, yet his focus never wavered. I marveled at his resilience and adaptability, knowing that this bond between us would be our greatest asset in the field. At night, when we returned to camp, I reviewed the day's events with Rex lying beside me. I spoke softly, praising his instincts and teaching him to stay calm even under stress. His steady breathing and attentive eyes reminded me that our partnership extended beyond commands. It was built on trust, respect, and understanding. I realized that every challenge, every tense moment, and every exercise was preparing us for the day we would face real danger on the beaches and streets of France. By the end of our first week of real combat exercises, the team had begun to rely on Rex as much as on any human member. The trust we shared was evident in every move, every glance, every silent command. I felt a quiet pride and an unspoken certainty when the storm truly hit Rex and I would be ready together. By the end of the second week on the front, the adrenaline and novelty of our first assignments had begun to give way to a more complex reality. Every patrol, every drill, every distant explosion left a mark not just on my body but on my mind. I found myself replaying moments in my head, a sudden bark from Rex, a sharp glance from a fellow soldier, the smell of gunpowder mixing with the wet sand and sea. Anxiety and anticipation had become constant companions. I worried endlessly, not just for myself, but for Rex. He was more than a dog. He was my partner, my confidant, and my lifeline. Every time he froze or barked, I felt both pride and fear. Pride that his instincts were flawless. Fear that a misstep on my part could put him in danger. The bond between us had deepened beyond what I had thought possible. I spoke to him often quietly, almost as if reassuring myself as much as him. Stay close, stay sharp, we'll get through this. His eyes, always steady and focused, seemed to answer back with unwavering confidence. Letters to my family became both a comfort and a challenge. I described our training and the tasks ahead, careful not to reveal the full terror of the battlefield, yet the weight of unspoken truths pressed on me. The separation from home gnawed at my heart, but the sense of purpose, the knowledge that we were part of a mission that mattered, kept me moving forward. The psychological strain was compounded by the sights and sounds of war that I had never encountered in training. Distant artillery cries from practice, dummies in field exercises, the tense anticipation in every soldier's movements. Rex seemed to absorb it all, responding with an instinctual calm that often steadied the humans around him. I realized that his presence didn't just save lives physically, it saved us mentally, reminding us of loyalty, trust, and the reason we endured. By the time the week ended, I understood that war was not simply a test of skill or courage, it was a test of resilience, of partnership, and of the ability to maintain humanity amidst chaos. Rex and I had faced our first real trials together, and though the beaches and towns of Normandy were still ahead, I felt a cautious hope. We were ready in body and mind to step further into the storm that awaited. By the time our first week of actual operations ended, I had come to a sobering realization the war was far more unforgiving than any drill or exercise back home. Each patrol left its mark on my body and mind, and every minor victory carried the weight of responsibility for the lives in our hands, both human and canine. Rex and I had survived, yes, but the shadow of the battles yet to come loomed over every step. Rex had proven himself beyond measure. He had alerted us to hidden obstacles, guided the squad through treacherous terrain, and saved lives through instincts I could never fully teach. I felt an immense pride, but it was tempered by the knowledge that danger lurked around every corner and that our bond would be tested far more severely in the days ahead. His unwavering focus and loyalty had become my anchor, a steadying force amid the unpredictability of war. As we gathered our gear each evening and returned to the makeshift camp, I allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. Letters from home weighed on my mind, a reminder of the life I had temporarily left behind, the family who prayed for my safety, and the simple world of fields and open skies that now seemed impossibly distant. I wrote carefully, concealing the true horrors, but conveying the sense of purpose and partnership Rex and I had forged. The patrols had also revealed the reality of teamwork in combat. Each soldier had a role, each decision carried consequences, and even a single misstep could end in tragedy. Watching Rex navigate this landscape with confidence and precision, I understood the true meaning of partnership, trust, reliance, and shared responsibility. It was a lesson that would serve me well in the chaos ahead. As night fell over the camp, I felt a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and anticipation. The war was only beginning, and the trials we had faced were but a prelude. I glanced at Rex lying beside me, his breathing slow and steady, and knew that whatever horrors awaited us on the beaches and streets of Normandy, we would face them together. Our bond was our strength, and it would carry us into the storms to come. The dawn was a gray, oppressive haze over the coastline, the kind that made shadows longer and breaths sharper. Our landing craft lurched against the waves, carrying us toward the beaches of Normandy. I gripped Rex's harness tightly, feeling the taut strength of his body next to mine, his ears pricked forward, eyes scanning every movement, every sound. Around us, soldiers clutched their rifles, knuckles, white faces, pale but determined. The roar of distant artillery and the whistle of incoming shells were a constant reminder there was no turning back. As we stepped onto the wet, shingle-laden beach, the chaos hit all at once. Smoke curled in thick tendrils, obscuring the coastline. The scent of salt gunpowder and churned earth filled my lungs. Every instinct screamed at me to run to hide, but I knew my duty, and Rex knew it too. The first patrol was ours. We had to scout ahead, locate mines, and alert our squad to potential ambushes. Rex froze mid-step, nose low to the ground. A sharp bark followed, echoing over the roar of the surf and distant gunfire. My heart jumped. Ahead, partially buried under sand and debris, was a mine. I signaled to the soldiers nearby, and they halted, eyes wide. Rex had saved lives before a single shot was fired. Pride and relief surged through me, but there was no time to linger. The battle was relentless. Throughout the morning, we moved cautiously, eyes and ears stretched to their limits. Rex sniffed every shadow, circled areas of debris, and signaled danger with a precision that left me in awe. When one soldier stumbled into a shallow crater, Rex barked sharply, drawing attention before disaster could strike. The teamwork between us, silent, instinctive, unspoken, felt like a lifeline in a world gone mad. The first firefight was brief but intense. Explosions shook the sand beneath our feet, and the cries of men echoed over the surf. I felt my muscles tense, with fear, adrenaline sharpening every sense. Rex stayed by my side, his presence a constant reminder that I was not alone. When the smoke finally cleared and the immediate threat subsided, I realized the stark truth: this was only the beginning. The beach was littered with debris, fear, and uncertainty, but we had survived our first test. As I knelt to check Rex brushing the sand from his coat and speaking softly to him, I knew that the days ahead would demand everything we had: courage, skill, and unwavering trust. And in that moment, I understood that our bond was more than companionship. It was survival. The roar of artillery had faded into an uneasy silence, but the aftermath was deafening. Bodies lay scattered across the sand, some shielded under debris, others twisted in positions that spoke of sudden violence. My stomach churned as I stumbled over a fallen rifle, my eyes searching desperately for familiar faces. The reality hit me harder than any training drill ever could. Some of my brothers in arms were gone, and there was nothing I could do to bring them back. Rex nudged my side, his head tilting as if sensing the weight pressing down on me. I knelt beside him, drawing in a shaky breath. The dog's calm, unwavering presence was the only steady point amid the chaos. He barked sharply, alerting me to a survivor trapped beneath a collapsed wooden barricade. Together we pulled him free, guiding him back to safety. That moment reinforced what I had always known. Rex wasn't just a companion, he was a guardian, a protector, a soldier in his own right. I moved through the battlefield, heart-heavy memories flashing of the men I had trained with, laughed with, and shared fleeting moments of camaraderie. Each name echoed in my mind: Thompson Garcia Lee. Faces blurred with the sand and smoke, yet the horror of their absence was seared into my consciousness. I had felt fear before, but this was different, a gnawing, hollow ache that reminded me of the cost of every choice made in war. Letters from home flickered in my memory, the gentle reminders from family of why I had left. I tried to hold on to that even as despair threatened to overwhelm me. The soldiers around me were either tending to the wounded or moving cautiously forward, their expressions, a mix of determination and numb shock. And through it all, Rex never faltered. He stayed at my side, his ears scanning, his nose alert, his gaze unwavering. His loyalty reminded me that even in the face of loss, we could endure. By the time we regrouped at the temporary camp, exhaustion and grief weighed on every soldier. I found a quiet corner, my hand resting on Rex's head, speaking softly to him about the men we had lost and the challenges ahead. The war had revealed its brutality in stark, unrelenting detail, and I knew that every step forward would demand courage beyond anything I had imagined. But for the first time, I felt the true strength of our partnership. Rex and I were bound by trust, by survival, and by the understanding that we must carry on no matter the cost. The next assault came without warning. Explosions ripped through the sand and smoke, sending debris and shrapnel in every direction. I felt a sharp sting in my leg, a hot burning sensation that made me stumble. Pain surged, but there was no time to collapse. Rex pressed close, sensing my falter, his body a shield and a guide as I forced myself to continue. Every step was agony, yet every glance at his unwavering eyes reminded me that stopping was not an option. The battlefield had transformed into a maze of mud craters and tangled metal. Bullets whizzed past, some finding their mark in the nearby debris, others embedding harmlessly in the sand. Rex moved instinctively, sniffing out danger, circling me and barking sharply whenever he detected hidden threats, mines, tripwires, or lurking enemy soldiers. His presence became my compass, his instincts, the difference between life and death in those chaotic moments. At one point, a shell exploded just meters away, throwing me to the ground and sending a spray of sand and smoke over Rex. He leapt into action without hesitation, dragging me behind a small rise in the sand that offered minimal cover. My heart pounded, my ears rang, and the taste of fear was metallic on my tongue. I could feel the raw brutality of war pressing in a relentless force that respected neither experience nor preparation. Through the haze, I saw the faces of my fallen comrades, a reminder that survival was as much about luck as it was about skill. Yet Rex never wavered, his body taut, alert, and ready. I realized in that instant that every drill, every training, exercise, every long hour of preparation had culminated in this moment of reliance. The bond between us was no longer just companionship. It was essential, visceral, and undeniable. By the time the chaos subsided, I was bleeding, bruised, and shaken to my core, but alive. Rex stayed by my side, licking my hand, nudging me gently as if to say, "You made it." I looked around at the scarred landscape, the overturned equipment, the silent, tense figures of our squad, and understood the magnitude of what lay ahead. Danger was omnipresent, and the war would continue to test every ounce of resilience, courage, and trust that Rex and I had built together. Amid the chaos of the battlefield, Rex proved what I had always suspected: he was more than a companion. He was a savior. As we advanced through the ruined streets of the small French town, his ears twitched, nose to the ground, eyes scanning every shadow. A faint, almost imperceptible whine drew my attention. Rex had picked up on a camouflage tripwire stretched across the debris. I froze, barely daring to breathe. Rex barked sharply, circling the wire, pawing at the ground until I understood the danger. One false step and the mine it triggered could have been fatal. I signaled the squad to halt and carefully guided them around the trap, every movement amplified by the adrenaline coursing through me. Rex stayed close, vigilant, refusing to leave my side even for a moment. I felt a surge of pride and relief that his instincts were flawless. Later, we came upon a group of soldiers pinned down by sniper fire. The streets were riddled with debris, providing limited cover. I whispered commands to Rex, and he moved ahead, weaving silently among rubble and shadows. His growl and sudden bark drew enemy attention long enough for the squad to reposition safely. One soldier glanced at me, eyes wide, whispering, "That dog just saved our lives." I could only nod, heart pounding, knowing the truth: Rex had saved more than one, and likely would again before the day was done. The intensity of the battle tested more than just our skills, it tested our bond. Fatigue, fear, and the constant threat of death pressed on both of us. Yet Rex remained unwavering, a steady presence that anchored me through the panic. I realized then that this partnership was unlike any I had experienced with another human. His loyalty was absolute, his courage instinctive, and his understanding of my commands nearly telepathic. By nightfall, when the skirmish subsided, I knelt beside him, brushing the grime from his coat and murmuring soft words of praise. His steady gaze met mine, and in that moment I understood the depth of our connection. In a world consumed by chaos and violence, our trust in one another was the only constant, the only certainty. Whatever horrors lay ahead, I knew we would face them together, relying on the unspoken bond forged in the crucible of war. By the end of that brutal day, exhaustion settled into my bones like a heavy fog. I had faced fear I could never have imagined, witnessed the fragility of life, and experienced the relentless chaos of war. The bravery of Rex had saved lives, yet the losses we endured weighed heavily on me. I began to question the meaning of it all, why we were here, why we risked everything, and whether the sacrifices would ever be justified. Alone for a brief moment behind a ruined wall, I allowed myself to think of home. Fields of golden corn, the farmhouse bathed in morning light, and the quiet oak grove where Rex and I had run together. That world felt impossibly distant, almost like a dream. The contrast between that peace and the devastation around me made the battle feel surreal, yet every sound, the crack of gunfire, the distant explosions, the shouts of the wounded reminded me of its harsh reality. Rex lay at my side ears, alert eyes scanning, yet his breathing was calm, steady, reassuring. His presence grounded me in ways I had not expected. I realized that in the midst of terror, despair, and moral confusion, our partnership was more than survival. It was a lifeline. Every instinct, every bark, every nudge reminded me that trust and loyalty could endure even in the most merciless circumstances. The psychological weight of the battlefield began to reshape my understanding of war. It was no longer just a matter of duty or strategy. It was a test of resilience, morality, and humanity. I could feel the toll on the soldiers around me, the quiet tension, the haunted expressions, the silent prayers muttered under their breath. And yet, in the eye of this storm, Rex and I had found a thread of clarity. The bond between man and dog was unshakable, a rare and precious certainty in a world of unpredictability. As night fell and the echoes of battle faded, I sat with Rex and reflected on the lessons of the day. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the determination to act despite it. Loyalty was not just a word, but a living, breathing force. And survival in its purest form was a shared effort, a symphony of instinct, training, and trust. The war had already begun to change me, not just as a soldier, but as a human being, and I knew that the trials ahead would continue to test the limits of both Jack Turner and his steadfast companion Rex. The battlefield stretched before me like a scar on the earth, jagged and unyielding. Craters pockmarked the sand remnants of shells and mortars that had ripped through the once quiet town. Smoke hung in thick gray curtains, curling around shattered buildings and the twisted frames of vehicles long abandoned. The stench of gunpowder, wet earth, and blood lingered, a constant reminder that life and death danced precariously on these grounds. I walked slowly, boots sinking into the mud, each step a reminder of the destruction we had survived and the danger that still lingered. Rex padded silently beside me, ears twitching, nose twitching at every shift in the air. His awareness was instinctive, his every move calculated to protect, guide, and anticipate threats. Watching him navigate the chaos, I marveled at his courage, his precision, and the unwavering focus that seemed almost supernatural. The cries of men echoed faintly in the distance, intermingled with the whistle of artillery and the occasional sharp report of gunfire. Every corner held potential danger, every shadow a possible threat. Yet, amidst the destruction, I found fleeting moments of humanity, a soldier helping another to rise, a medic tending quickly to the wounded, a shared glance of understanding between men and animals united by survival. These small gestures were fragile sparks of hope in a landscape defined by ruin. I paused atop a small rise, surveying the battlefield. The horizon was a mix of smoke and pale sunlight, the waves crashing relentlessly against the shore. It struck me how indifferent nature was to our struggles. The wind and sea continued their eternal rhythm while we scrambled to survive in our fragile, chaotic world. Rex nudged my hand, and I crouched beside him, drawing strength from his calm presence. In a place defined by fear and uncertainty, he was a constant, a reminder that trust, loyalty, and courage could endure even here. The reflection was sobering. War was not a series of heroic moments. It was a test of endurance, patience, and humanity. Every detail of the battlefield, from the mud underfoot to the smoke in the sky, left an imprint on my mind and heart. And yet, as I stood with Rex by my side, I understood that our bond gave us the resilience to face whatever horrors lay ahead. The battlefield was a teacher, harsh and unrelenting, but together we had begun to learn its lessons. As the smoke began to lift and the din of battle faded into distant echoes, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The first major engagement had tested everything I thought I knew about courage, endurance, and the fragile threads that connect life and death. I knelt beside Rex, brushing the grime from his coat, feeling the steady beat of his heart against my hand. In that simple act, I found a moment of calm amid the chaos, a reminder that some constants, loyalty, trust, and companionship persist even in the storm of war. The losses we had endured weighed heavily on my mind. Faces of fallen comrades lingered in my thoughts, men who had laughed with me hours before, now silenced forever. The burden of survival was tangible, a pressing weight that demanded both gratitude and sorrow. Yet through it all, Rex remained a beacon of steadfast courage. His presence reminded me that even when despair threatened to overwhelm, resilience could be found in the bond we shared. Walking through the battered streets to regroup with the rest of the unit, I realized the battlefield was more than a physical space. It was a crucible that reshaped the mind, body, and soul. Every explosion, every narrow escape, and every act of bravery had left its mark, forging in me a deeper understanding of the costs and consequences of war. The lessons of trust, vigilance, and partnership, particularly with Rex, had become as vital as any weapon or strategy we carried. And yet I knew this was only the beginning. The war would continue to challenge us, to demand choices that would test our courage, morality, and humanity. There would be more battles, more loss, and more moments where life and death hung by a thread. Rex and I had survived our first trial together, but the storm ahead promised challenges far greater than the ones we had already faced. As night fell and we settled into temporary cover, I whispered to Rex, "This is just the start, buddy. Whatever comes next, we face it together." He rested his head against my knee, eyes alert yet calm, as if answering, "I'm with you always." In that moment, I understood the truth that would carry me forward in the relentless tide of war. The bond between man and dog could be a lifeline, a source of strength, and a reminder that even amid destruction, courage and loyalty endure. The morning after the battle, the silence felt almost unreal. The relentless roar of artillery had faded, but the aftermath pressed on every nerve in my body. My leg throbbed where a shard of shrapnel had grazed me, a constant burning reminder of the danger we had just endured. I sank to the ground beside Rex, who lay at my side, ears, flicking eyes alert even in the quiet. He was covered in sand and grime, muscles tense from hours of relentless vigilance, yet he remained calm and attentive, a silent reassurance amid my exhaustion. Walking through the battered streets of the town, I couldn't help but notice the human cost. Bodies of fallen comrades and scattered equipment littered the streets. Some of the men had returned to camp limping or leaning on one another, their faces etched with fatigue, grief, and disbelief. The war had revealed itself in its rawest, cruelest form, stripping away any illusions I had harbored about heroism or glory. Each step forward was a test of will, a reminder that survival came at a steep price. Rex nudged my hand gently, sensing my unease. I had trained him to respond to danger, to act with precision and loyalty, but I realized he also comforted me, anchoring my mind in a reality where we could still survive together. His calm presence allowed me a moment to reflect on the losses we had endured. The laughter of friends now silenced the faces I would carry with me forever. I felt a knot of guilt knowing that each decision I had made on that beach, each split-second choice, had consequences that could not be undone. Even in the brief pauses between movement, the battlefield remained alive with reminders of chaos, the acrid smell of gunpowder, distant echoes of mortar fire, and the moans of the wounded. It was a harsh education in the fragility of life, and Rex's steady vigilance was the thread that held me together. I began to understand that every patrol, every engagement demanded not only skill and courage, but also a steadfast mind and a loyal companion I could rely on without question. By the end of that day, I felt the full weight of what we had endured. Pain, fear, grief, and exhaustion intertwined with relief and gratitude. Rex leaned against me as I sat quietly, both of us breathing heavily, knowing that this was only the beginning. The battle had left its mark and we had survived, but the war would continue to challenge every ounce of our strength, resolve, and trust. The next hours blurred into a tense haze. We were tasked with moving through a narrow, rubble-strewn alley to reach a forward observation point. Every step was a calculation. The debris, the lingering smoke, and the ever-present threat of hidden explosive made it a minefield in more ways than one. My leg throbbed with a shrapnel wound, and every nerve in my body screamed caution. I knew that a single misstep could endanger not just myself, but Rex and the squad relying on me. As we advanced, a sudden shout cut through the air. One of the younger soldiers had tripped, falling toward a partially concealed tripwire. Time slowed in that instant. I could see the panic in his eyes, the terror of imminent injury or death. My mind raced. Should I leave him and continue toward our objective, ensuring we complete the mission? Or should I risk everything to save him, knowing that the enemy could strike at any moment? Rex reacted before I could fully process the choice. He lunged forward, barking sharply, nudging the soldier backward and circling to signal danger. His instincts had detected the threat far sooner than I could. I seized the moment, grabbing the young man's arm and pulling him to safety. My heart pounded, adrenaline surging, yet there was a sharp, bitter awareness. Each decision carried consequences, and there were no guarantees that our next choice would be so fortunate. After the immediate danger passed, I took a moment to assess our position. The alley was clear, but the experience left me shaken. I realized that war demanded more than courage or skill. It demanded constant judgment, split-second decisions that weighed morality against survival. Each choice etched itself into my consciousness, a reminder that heroism often came intertwined with fear, guilt, and the burden of responsibility. Rex sat beside me, panting lightly, tail-flicking eyes steady. He had acted instinctively flawlessly, and yet his presence reminded me of the trust I carried not just in him, but in every decision I made that affected the lives of others. I placed a hand on his head, whispering softly, "We did the right thing, buddy." And for a moment, amidst the ruin and chaos, I understood that the bond we shared was not just companionship. It was a lifeline, the compass guiding me through the moral and physical minefields of war. The day after that narrow escape orders came for a new mission. Our unit was to conduct reconnaissance along the outskirts of a partially liberated village, checking for remaining enemy positions and locating civilians in need of assistance. The task sounded straightforward on paper, but the reality was anything but. The streets were littered with rubble, overturned carts, and the remnants of buildings reduced to splinters. Every corner concealed potential threats, every shadow could hide danger. Rex and I moved cautiously, our senses attuned to every detail. He sniffed the ground, his ears flicking at the faintest sounds, nose twitching at hidden explosives, or the subtle scent of enemy movement. I had grown to rely on his instincts completely. His alerts guided our team through narrow alleys and across unstable debris fields, often moments before I could perceive the threat myself. One collapsed wall hidden under a layer of debris creaked ominously as a soldier stepped forward, but Rex barked sharply, freezing the group just in time. The moment passed safely, yet it underscored how precarious every step remained. The village itself offered its own challenges. Civilians emerged from hiding eyes wide with fear and curiosity. Some were grateful, others wary, unsure whether the approaching soldiers brought salvation or further peril. Jack reflected on the dual responsibility we carried not just as soldiers but as protectors of lives that depended on our judgment and restraint. Rex, ever perceptive, mirrored my attentiveness, moving calmly among the frightened villagers and offering a comforting presence through his steady demeanor. We continued our patrol through ruined streets and bombed-out farms, navigating small creeks, overgrown paths, and abandoned buildings. The mission demanded focus, vigilance, and precise communication among the squad. Rex's skills were indispensable. He detected a hidden cache of explosives before anyone could stumble into it, signaling the squad and averting disaster once again. His intelligence, speed, and reliability reinforced the trust and interdependence that had been forged in previous battles. By the end of the day, exhaustion weighed heavily on all of us. But amidst fatigue, a sense of accomplishment emerged. The mission was completed without injury, civilians were accounted for, and our team had navigated danger through skill, instinct, and the unbreakable bond between man and dog. I looked down at Rex, brushing the dust from his fur, and felt a quiet gratitude. In this relentless and unforgiving environment, our partnership was more than survival. It was our guiding light through chaos. That night after the village patrol, I found a quiet corner to sit and gather my thoughts. The moon cast pale light over the ruined streets, illuminating the twisted remnants of what had once been homes, shops, and lives. I rested my hand on Rex's head, feeling the steady warmth of his body against mine. In moments like this, I realized that survival in war was about more than training or courage. It was about awareness, patience, and the bonds that sustained you. I reflected on the days we had endured together, the chaos on the beaches, the mines. Rex had detected the lives saved by his instincts. Each experience had left its mark on me, reshaping how I view danger, responsibility, and trust. I began to understand that leadership was not just about issuing commands or following orders. It was about responsibility, vigilance, and making decisions that could mean life or death for those around you. Rex had taught me lessons I never could have learned on my own. His unwavering focus, calm in the face of terror, and instinctive understanding of my intentions reminded me daily of the value of trust. I had learned to listen in new ways, not only to him, but to the subtle cues in the environment, the expressions of my fellow soldiers, and the whispers of intuition that had guided me through peril. The war had forced me to grow quickly, to shed illusions of invincibility, and embrace a deeper awareness of mortality. Each patrol reinforced that courage was not the absence of fear, but the determination to act despite it. Loyalty was not just an abstract ideal, it was a living, breathing force manifested through actions, presence, and unwavering commitment. And in Rex, I had found the truest embodiment of both courage and loyalty, a partner whose presence strengthened my resolve and tempered my fears. As I looked across the village, its silent streets illuminated by the moon, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The battles ahead would be harrowing and the losses inevitable, but the lessons learned and the bond I shared with Rex gave me strength. We had survived, adapted, and grown. Together we were ready to face whatever storms awaited us, relying on trust, skill, and the unbreakable partnership that had carried us this far. The following days brought a broader perspective on the campaign we were part of. While Rex and I focused on the immediate dangers, mines, ambushes, and wounded soldiers, the larger picture slowly came into focus. Reports filtered in about the progress of the Normandy invasion. The Allies were slowly pushing inland, capturing strategic towns and forcing the German forces to retreat in some areas, while other sectors remained fiercely contested. Each tactical victory carried profound consequences not just for the soldiers on the front lines, but for the civilians trapped in the crossfire. Rex and I often moved ahead of the main force, scouting for hazards and assessing enemy positions. The landscapes we traversed, bombed-out villages, shattered farmland, and narrow hedgerows, were a direct reflection of the strategic value and cost of each maneuver. I began to understand how every patrol we conducted was part of a larger, interconnected effort. Our small actions, Rex detecting a hidden mine, my guidance of the squad through rubble-strewn streets, directly impacted the success of the larger operation and the lives of those around us. There was also a constant awareness of the human element: civilians, displaced families, and terrified children who had nowhere to hide. Each encounter reminded me that war extended beyond the immediate battle, shaping communities and altering lives in ways that no training exercise could prepare one for. Rex, ever perceptive, seemed to sense these nuances too, moving cautiously, guiding us past structures that might collapse, and offering a silent reassurance to frightened civilians simply by his presence. The successes and failures of the campaign had immediate repercussions for our squad. Orders changed daily based on intelligence and reports from higher command, forcing us to adapt quickly. One moment, we were clearing a street to ensure safe passage. The next, we were diverted to assist a unit under fire several miles away. Each decision, each movement carried weight. I realized that understanding the broader strategy was essential, not just for survival, but for making informed choices that could save lives, human and canine alike. By connecting our small-scale experiences to the larger campaign, I began to grasp the significance of our role in this immense operation. Rex's abilities, my judgment, and the coordination of our squad were threads woven into the larger fabric of the war. Every mine avoided, every alert given, every life saved contributed to the momentum of the Allied advance. And in that realization, I found a sense of purpose amidst the chaos, understanding that even amid devastation, our efforts mattered. Weeks turned into months, and the relentless pace of the campaign left its mark on both body and mind. My legs, still tender from the shrapnel wound, reminded me daily of the fragility of life on the battlefield. Fatigue settled deep into my muscles, and even brief moments of rest were fleeting, interrupted by the constant hum of distant artillery or the urgent calls of soldiers in need. But perhaps the more insidious toll was psychological, an undercurrent of tension, vigilance, and lingering fear that never fully faded. Rex, too, bore the consequences of constant alertness and exposure to danger. Though he remained vigilant, agile, and remarkably perceptive, I noticed the subtle signs of exhaustion, a slower gait, heavier panting, moments of hesitation that hadn't been there before. Each day reminded me that even the strongest and most loyal companion could feel the weight of war. Caring for him became as much a responsibility as leading my squad. Feeding, grooming, and ensuring his rest were as crucial as any tactical decision I made. The experiences of battle loss and moral complexity left imprints on my mind. Faces of fallen comrades resurfaced in quiet moments, dreams of explosions and chaos replayed vividly, and the ethical dilemmas of war, choosing who to save first, weighing risk against duty, continued to haunt me. Yet amidst these lingering shadows, there was growth. I had learned to endure, to trust instinct and preparation, and to recognize that leadership was as much about compassion and care as it was about strategy. Our bond, Rex and I, had strengthened immeasurably. I relied on him not only for survival, but also for emotional stability. He was a constant in a world defined by unpredictability, a reminder of loyalty, courage, and the power of partnership. In a sense, he became my anchor, keeping me grounded even when the chaos threatened to sweep me away. As the campaign pressed on, I began to see the broader significance of our survival and contributions. Each mine avoided, each warning bark, each life saved was a small testament to perseverance, skill, and trust. And though the scars, visible and invisible, would remain long after the fighting ended, I understood that they had shaped me, teaching lessons about resilience, empathy, and the enduring strength found in bonds forged under fire. As the weeks of relentless patrols and combat drew on, I began to see the full weight of the war pressing on us. Each day left scars, some visible, some etched deep into the mind. I had endured injuries, navigated moral dilemmas, and faced losses that seemed impossible to reconcile. Yet amidst the fatigue and sorrow, one truth became undeniable. Rex and I had survived, grown, and adapted together. Our bond had deepened into something unbreakable, a partnership rooted in trust, instinct, and mutual reliance that had proven its worth time and again. Looking back on the missions we had completed, the challenges we had faced, and the lives saved through careful vigilance and quick action, I realized that the lessons of war were not only about tactics or courage, they were about resilience, decision-making under pressure, and the unspoken understanding between those who relied on each other completely. Rex had been more than a partner in combat. He had been a constant source of guidance and reassurance, a living reminder that loyalty and courage could endure even in the harshest circumstances. The campaign had also shaped my perspective on life and duty. I had witnessed the fragility of human existence, the randomness of survival, and the profound impact of even small acts of bravery and care. Every patrol, every alert from Rex, every decision I had made carried consequences that reached far beyond the immediate moment. I had learned to weigh these consequences, to act decisively yet thoughtfully, and to recognize that our actions were threads in a much larger tapestry of events unfolding across the war-torn landscape. As night fell over our temporary camp, I found a quiet moment with Rex resting by my side. I whispered to him, "We've come this far, buddy, but there's still more ahead." His steady breathing and alert gaze reminded me that whatever challenges awaited, we would face them together. The experiences of the campaign had changed me, hardened me, but also taught me to value trust, loyalty, and the bonds that make survival possible. With that understanding, I felt a quiet resolve. The coming days would demand even greater courage, harder decisions, and deeper reliance on Rex. But we were ready. The storm of war still raged, and our journey was far from over, yet I knew that together we would endure, adapt, and continue to fight, not just for survival, but for the principles that had brought us this far. Stepping off the transport onto familiar soil, a wave of both relief and disbelief washed over me. The air smelled different here, clean, untainted by the acrid smoke of gunpowder and burning debris. The rolling fields of the Midwest stretched before me, bathed in the warm glow of the late afternoon Sunday. It was a stark contrast to the chaos and destruction I had endured in Europe, and yet the memories clung to me as tightly as Rex's loyal presence at my side. Rex trotted beside me, tail high, ears alert, but his demeanor held the calm assurance that had guided me through every perilous moment of the campaign. Even after months of relentless patrols, firefights, and exhaustion, he seemed unchanged by the horrors we had faced. Watching him navigate the familiar farm paths, I felt a deep sense of gratitude and relief. His unwavering loyalty had been my anchor, and now it was a source of comfort as we returned to a world untouched by the violence that had defined our lives for so long. As I approached the farmhouse, my family appeared in the doorway, their expressions a mixture of astonishment, joy, and cautious disbelief. My mother's hands trembled as she reached for mine, her eyes brimming with tears. "Jack, you're really here," she whispered. My younger sister Emily clung to my side, her embrace warm and grounding. I smiled, feeling both the weight of the past and the fragile hope of renewal. Rex nudged me gently, sensing my mixture of emotion, and I patted his head, grateful for his steadfast companionship. Walking through the familiar halls of my childhood home, I became acutely aware of the contrast between the peaceful rhythm of farm life and the relentless chaos of battle. Every creak of the floorboards, every familiar scent felt almost sacred, a reminder of what we had been fighting to protect. Yet beneath the relief, I carried the indelible impressions of war, the faces of fallen comrades, the cries of the wounded, the smoke, mud, and fear that had been my constant companions. That evening, I sat with Rex on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The world seemed calm, ordinary, and impossibly quiet. But in my heart, I knew that the war had left its mark on me, on Rex, and on the bond we shared. And even as we embraced the peace of home, I understood that the lessons of survival, trust, and loyalty would remain with us, forever guiding us through whatever life had in store next. The days after returning home were a strange blend of relief and disorientation. My body ached in ways that reminded me constantly of what we had endured. The shrapnel wound in my leg throbbed with every step, a persistent reminder of the battles that had defined the past months. Even simple tasks, walking across the yard, bending to pick up a tool, took more effort than I expected. Yet more than the physical reminders, it was the psychological weight that pressed hardest. Memories of the beaches, the streets of shattered towns, and the faces of fallen comrades replayed in my mind with unnerving clarity. Each sound, whether the distant rumble of thunder or the sharp crack of a branch underfoot, brought fleeting flashes of artillery, gunfire, and panic. Sleep was fitful, punctuated by dreams of explosions and chaos that seemed all too real. I realized that the war had left a deeper mark on me than any physical injury could. Rex, ever vigilant, remained my constant companion through this transition. His presence was grounding. His calm demeanor reminded me that some things had endured through the storm. We walked the familiar fields together each step, a slow process of reacclimating to peace. While I had survived physically, the emotional and mental scars were a quieter, more persistent battle. Watching him rest at my side, I found a measure of comfort, a reminder that loyalty and companionship were shields as strong as any armor. The psychological aftermath extended beyond fear and fatigue. I carried a sense of survivor's guilt, questioning why I lived while others had fallen. The laughter, the camaraderie, and the shared trials with soldiers who would never return haunted me. Even as I embraced family, friends, and the rhythms of home, I was acutely aware that I was a changed person. War had instilled a heightened vigilance, a lingering tension, and an appreciation for life tempered by grief and loss. Through it all, Rex remained unwavering. His quiet support helped me navigate the invisible wounds of the mind and spirit. Slowly, with patience and the grounding presence of home, I began to process the experiences, acknowledge the losses, and understand that survival was not just a matter of escaping danger, but also of carrying forward the lessons, the memories, and the bonds forged under fire. The war had ended, but the journey of healing and reflection had just begun. Sitting quietly on the porch, watching the wind ripple through the fields, I found myself reflecting on everything we had endured. The war had taken much from me, friends, comrades, innocence, but it had also taught lessons that no classroom or training ground ever could. I thought of Rex, his unwavering courage and instinctive loyalty, and realized that the deepest lessons came not only from human bonds, but from the extraordinary trust and companionship shared with him. War had a way of stripping life down to its barest essentials, survival, trust, and the choices we made in moments of life or death. Each patrol, each battle, each split-second decision had left an imprint on me, teaching me the value of vigilance, courage, and resilience. I had learned that fear was not the enemy. It was the measure of what mattered, the signal that demanded respect and careful action. Rex had been my constant guide, protector, and confidant through it all. His calm presence in the chaos reminded me that loyalty was not just an abstract ideal, but a living, breathing force. Watching him lie at my side now, I understood that the lessons of war extended beyond tactics or strategy. They were lessons in empathy, responsibility, and mutual reliance. Every alert, every instinctive move he made had been a lesson in trust and the profound connection that could exist between species. I also reflected on the fragility of life and the importance of appreciating moments of peace. The faces of those who had fallen in battle haunted me, a reminder that bravery often comes at the highest cost. Yet amid the grief and the scars, there was hope, the resilience of the human spirit, the bonds of friendship and loyalty, and the quiet courage found in moments of compassion. Finally, I realized that survival was not simply about living through the war. It was about carrying forward the lessons learned, honoring the sacrifices of those who did not return, and cherishing the bonds that had sustained us. Rex and I had endured, grown, and learned together. In the end, the war had shaped us profoundly, leaving scars that would not fade, but also wisdom and strength that would endure. As the sun set behind the familiar hills of home, I found myself contemplating the true legacy of the war, not in victories, medals, or battles won, but in the lessons and bonds that endured beyond the battlefield. Rex had been my companion through every peril, every loss, and every moment of doubt. His unwavering loyalty and courage had taught me more about trust, perseverance, and selflessness than any drill or instruction ever could. The war had been a crucible, stripping life down to essentials, survival, vigilance, and the choices we made under pressure. Yet, amid the destruction and loss, there were moments of profound humanity. Acts of kindness between soldiers, courage in the face of overwhelming odds, and the quiet strength of those who endured reminded me that even in the darkest times, character and compassion can persist. Rex embodied these virtues in every action, alerting us to hidden dangers, protecting lives, and offering silent reassurance when fear threatened to overwhelm us. I have come to understand that the legacy of these experiences is not just my own. It is the story of comrades who gave their lives, of civilians caught in the chaos, and of the animals who served alongside us. It is the lesson that loyalty, courage, and companionship transcend the boundaries of species, forging connections that sustain us through the unimaginable. Through Rex, I witnessed how trust and devotion could save lives, preserve sanity, and provide hope when all seemed lost. As I share this story, I hope to honor not only the men and women who fought and sacrificed, but also the animals who served alongside us and the principles that guided us through uncertainty. The memory of what we endured and the relationships we forged under fire serve as a reminder that peace is precious, loyalty is invaluable, and courage is often quiet and steadfast. Ultimately, the message is simple yet profound. Wars may end, landscapes may heal, and scars may fade, but the lessons of loyalty, courage, and compassion endure. Rex and I survived not by chance alone, but through the bond we shared, the trust we built, and the unwavering resolve to face each challenge together. That bond and the lessons it carries is the truest legacy of the firestorm we endured. Sitting on the porch with Rex beside me, I allowed myself to take in the full scope of what we had endured. The field stretched out in familiar, tranquil patterns, yet my mind carried the echoes of distant battles, the cries of comrades lost, and the relentless chaos of the front lines. The war had changed me, shaped me in ways that could never be undone, and yet it had also taught me what it truly meant to trust, to endure, and to care for another being completely. I reflected on the journey from the training grounds to the beaches of Normandy, through towns reduced to rubble and streets filled with fear. Every patrol, every narrow escape, and every life saved had contributed to a deeper understanding of survival, not only in the physical sense, but in the emotional and moral dimensions as well. Rex had been a constant through it all, his instincts, courage, and loyalty anchoring me when uncertainty threatened to overwhelm. He was not just a dog, he was my partner, my teacher, and my guide through a world that often seemed merciless. The lessons I carry are not just my own. They belong to the friends who did not return, to the civilians who endured unimaginable hardships, and to the animals like Rex who offered unwavering companionship and protection. In their memory and in gratitude for their presence, I strive to live with the awareness, patience, and compassion that the firestorm of war instilled in me. I have learned that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. That loyalty and trust are forces stronger than any weapon, and that hope can persist even amid the darkest circumstances. As I watch the sun set over the familiar hills and fields, I understand that survival was never just about escaping danger. It was about carrying forward the lessons, the bonds, and the memories forged under fire. Rex rests at my feet, alert yet calm, a living testament to the endurance of loyalty, bravery, and companionship. The war has ended, but the journey of remembrance, reflection, and the application of what we learned continues. In the end, the story is simple yet profound. Life is fragile, but the bonds we form, human or animal, can sustain us through anything. The scars, both visible and invisible, remain, but so too does the wisdom, courage, and love that endured through the firestorm. And in that enduring bond between Rex and me, I find the truest measure of survival, the deepest lesson of the war, and the legacy I carry forward.